Welcome to another episode in I Am Maria podcast, a space where we explore the impact stories that inspire us to be who we are today, showing how our personal decisions and tools shape our lives. I am honored to share the voice of Rocio Espinola today, a first generation American with roots in Paraguay. Her stories bridges cultures, challenges, and quite a strength of someone who had to find her place in between two worlds. From her early days in Georgia, navigating school and childhood bullying, to becoming a fierce advocate for immigrant voices and carving out her own path as an executive assistant. Rocio's journey is one of a quiet power, identity exploration, and deep empathy. She reminds us that our stories don't have to fit in a box, and sometimes the most powerful things we can do is choose to stand on the side of the right, even when it's uncomfortable. So let's get into it. And of course, my first question, besides just thank you, Rocio, for being here, is who is Rocio Espinola?
Well, hi, Maria. Thank you so much for that introduction. That was very touching. Thank you so much. Well, I guess I would say, who am I? I am someone who is rough around the edges, someone who likes to always be on the side of truth as much as I can be. Also, I enjoy staying in a space where it's uncomfortable because I feel like with being uncomfortable, you're pushing the boundaries and seeing stuff about yourself that you may not have learned, that will help strengthen you personally and also with your career.
I
Uh,
agree with you.
yeah.
That is so beautiful. I actually this year I have been telling myself, get out of the comfort zone. And every time I do that, I feel like I grow so much. And just until now, I realize that power just because you're saying that, Rocio. That's so
Oh,
powerful.
no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because it's hard, especially like as a kid, you start off very shy, kind of, your self-confidence may not be there. You don't want to ruffle feathers. You want to be liked. You
Mm,
don't want to cause waves. And then you realize, well, that's not good or healthy for you. But also, it's like, who knows who is in front of you that day? That something that you say might help them that day or in their future. So it's kind of important to like not just push boundaries for yourself, but make the people around you. You don't want yes people around you. You want the people that are going to like push you, question, your ideas, your thoughts, and your choices. It makes you
that's
a bigger
totally
person.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Lucia, you know that I Am Maria podcast is about those decisions and the toolbox that we have. And I want to dig into 1 to 3 important decisions in your life that have led you to the life that you have today and the person you are today.
Awesome. Well, I will say the biggest decision was when my parents moved here. So it was kind of made prior to me being on this earth. So I always keep that in the back of my mind, what life would be like in Paraguay versus in the US. And so I'm very humbled and I understand my privilege and my life probably would have been a lot tougher for me. And I may not even be in the US. Who knows who that person would be. I'm not saying she would be any less because I don't believe that. I think I would be as strong as I am today, no matter where I lived. But maybe different opportunities. Who knows who that girl could have been. I always wonder that, and it'd be kind of cool if you could go back in time and see, that version of yourself. Because I feel like every path you take takes you to a different version of you. But I would say the most that impacted me was, college was never my thing. I did it because, coming from parents of immigrants, it's like you have to be a doctor, you got to be a lawyer. Those are your only two options of success. And I understood where my parents came from with that, especially as a woman. you want to make sure, you make your own money. You don't ever have to depend on anyone, and also knowing the life they came from, a more, not a life of privilege. Um, I definitely understood that from them, and you also want to respect what your parents want for you. And I think you probably know as well, like when you come from parents of immigrants, like it's their way or no way, but out of respect, because they brought you to, you've come to this country and they brought you to this country, or you're born into this country. And so you feel a lot of like, okay, I need to make sure I do right by them and everything in life, And my dad always said to me, like, all you have is your name. And when you tarnish that, like, what do you have left? And so when I chose to not take that path, like my dad took, I knew that was going to be hard, not just on myself, but on my parents. It was very rocky with our relationship for a while because they couldn't understand why are you making these decisions for, you have to abide by what the parents say. It's what they say, not what you want. And so I kind of just, going on that path, not knowing what it was going to look like, that was really scary, and not really having anyone to depend on but myself. And like I've told you, never having a job outside, outside of chores in the house, that was also scary because I was like, I don't know what it's like to interview for a job. I don't know what job do I look for? And so it was quite an interesting path. But I'm happy I took it. It made me who I am today, you know.
Nice. Yeah, I always see this as life as a game. In fact, I used to love the game Life. Life, I don't know if you ever play. You can make
Mhm.
decisions, and depending on that decision, that will take you to a route, different route, but beautiful route. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I crossed over your life, Rocio, because when we see each other in the office, I smile right away when I see you, because you're always with that good energy, and it's not only me who sees that. You're walking around the office and you're smiling. Everybody's smiling to you, and that is so beautiful to see.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, that's another thing like my dad always taught me. He was like, whatever's going on in your personal life or what's going on in work, always make sure, you don't show that, because I don't want to ruin someone else's day. What if someone's having not a great day and I give them a smile, a hello, that could mean the world to that person, or just like, how are you doing? And so you never know what someone else is going through. And so I never
Yeah.
want to put any of my stresses on other people. I want to make sure I always exude positivityness, to others.
I love that. And as you were taking us into your decisions, I could relate into, that Latino culture into until you live under this roof, you will do
Yes.
what I say. So,
Yes.
but
Yes.
it's culturally, and it's fun to see how that shaped our life in a way. But
Absolutely.
let's get into your toolbox, Rocio, that has, accompanying you, and that still is there with you. Those resources, those techniques or habits that you have. Can you share with us?
Well, you know what it is? I feel like my strongest tools that I've had since I was a child, I was very shy, very introverted. So I was always that kid that kind of sat back and just, I would watch how people moved, they didn't have to say anything, but just, how they walked, how they talked. And I think for me, my biggest tool is truly getting to know a person without even them saying anything to me or me saying anything to them. And I think my biggest tool is being able to connect with anyone and everyone, no matter your status. And I truly do I truly do care. So if I'm asking a question of someone, it's meaningful, it means something. I'm not just saying it to say it. But also for myself, I think the biggest tool is, because I'm also the biggest tool, me being an introvert, I like to be by myself a lot. And I think that's hard for a lot of people, especially during COVID. A lot of people, didn't know how to maneuver being alone and being with their own thoughts. And that's something I've always been okay with. And I think that's my biggest tool is I'm okay with being alone and with my own thoughts. And those can be scary thoughts. They can be great thoughts. But I like to feel the struggles because I know that makes me stronger. Um, Even, I mean, I don't know if I've shared this with you. I've never had a sip of alcohol in my life. So, like, I don't know what it's like to take a moment and just kind of have a glass of wine, go party it up as a college kid. Like, when I was going through my lows, it was me by myself going through every single feeling, and again, nothing wrong with anyone who drinks. It just was a choice that I made as a kid. And I was like, oh, I'm not interested in that. And so I like to feel the lows as much as I like to feel the highs because those lows is what makes you a better you to navigate any hard time that comes to you. So you will always know, like, no matter what life throws at me, I'm good because I'm good with being alone with my thoughts. I know how to maneuver through them and just, journal. I love to run, so I run every day. That's like my stress reliever. But I think that would be my biggest tool is just being able to be open with everyone, non-judgmental, talking to anyone and everyone, but also sitting in my own like silence.
Wow, I love this. I love to be by myself. And I grew up in a family that it was always like, why are you by yourself? Like, come and hang out with everybody. And it's like, yeah, I love to socialize as well, but that time with me is just so relaxing, and I always felt weird. I don't know why would I enjoy just being by myself? Yes, I do.
Yes. It's good.
Good. I love that. Let's get into exploring your decisions. We discussed a little bit into your journey. How is that growing up in Georgia as a first generation American with Paraguayan roots? That's kind of difficult. I'm sure, Rocio, and back in the days, I'm sure it was, even more difficult. I struggle with that, and somehow the identity, right? It's like that dual. Is it who am I? How did
Yeah.
that duality shape your identity, Rocio?
Yeah, so it was really hard when I was younger because I always compare myself to other kids and their parents. And I think the one struggle I had was like, for instance, with my mom, because like she didn't understand the American way. So there are things that are okay that you do here that you wouldn't be okay doing in Paraguay, or things that she would understand as little as like sleepovers, or when you turn 16, you learn to drive and you like but just that communication with her was hard because she's navigating, first time in America, not knowing the language in a country she doesn't know. So she only knows how she was raised. So I think that was difficult in itself. But also like in school, it's like at a young age. I mean, I learned very young in kindergarten where, little kids were bullying me and saying, get back into the fields and this and that, and you're a dirty Mexican. And it was weird because I don't know where I learned it from or if it was just always in me. It never affected me. Those comments didn't affect me. It was just more of, well, you keep getting the country wrong. Like that's not where my family's from. Like I was like, no, I'm just saying. Um, so that was kind of interesting to always have to like tell people and explain to them, well, that's not, but they didn't care. It was just they're just trying to be mean kids. Or even in school where teachers would just be like, oh, well, she's dumb. And it wasn't that I was dumb. It's like you are dealing with two languages, and whether or not like people realize it, you get stuck in your brain and you have those moments of like, okay, I'm not understanding the question. And even as an
Mhm.
adult, you hear people sometimes get, they get frustrated with you because you're like, I just answered your question, or or I'm asking you again. And what I've learned from that is I have to take a minute and really process what they're saying. I don't have to answer right away, whether you're in front of me or, it's an email or a text or a phone call. I can take a minute and digest what you're asking, but also not be scared to ask the question again. Like, I'm sorry, just to be clear, is this what you're asking? Or is this what you mean by that? Because I sometimes feel like there is like some type of like crisscross, of wiring or something. And that can be frustrating.
I was gonna say that it's so strong from you to, to have that mindset since you're young, because honestly, I did, and I kind of struggle in a way still because of my accent, even though I'm not from here. I'm from Venezuela. My thought, it's a muscle and will always be like that. And I'm proud.
Yeah.
But it made me feel bad at the beginning, and even more shy because I didn't want to speak.
Right, right. And I'm sure also when you're having a debate or something with someone, that's it, the struggle can be worse because you're trying to get your words out quickly with someone, but it's yeah, you get tongue-tied almost, which can be hard.
Yeah.
But I also learned too, like living in South Georgia in a small town, and you're the only like predominantly like Latina in that town. In our
Mm.
school, I mean, it was, we were the only Latinos in our school at the time. And, or actually even minority, because I want to say there weren't any other minorities at the time when I was there. And that's a struggle because you're always, especially as a young girl, you're always comparing yourself to the other girls. You're like, okay, blue eyes, blonde hair, the way they dress versus the way I dress. And I've always been a quirky, I guess I would like to say my style is quirky. I just wear what I feel like makes me happy. And I don't care if it matches. Like, or even with sunglasses, how girls are always like, oh, you've got the frame that fits your face. And I'm like, but I like bright pink and I like bright neon green. And I like cat eyes. I like I don't, I just put whatever together on what I like. And I think that also kind of is a part of like me being artistic. I
And
express
we
it
can see
through,
that. We
oh,
love that.
thank
I
you.
love that.
Thank you. So I find that that's okay that you're not like the other girls. And that doesn't take away from them. It's yeah, it's beauty is different for everyone, and
Yeah.
that's okay to be different.
Yeah. And in our culture, not not every girl that is different. I mean, in my culture, not every girl that is different, it's well received. Usually it's like the black sheep. And well, the black sheep is actually different in so many ways that she can do and be the best, and then everybody can actually follow. It was just different from, and
Right.
I'm talking about my experience.
Mhm.
But let's get a little bit into the bullying, because that's something I was even talking a little bit about with the community the other day, especially because there's so many series and stories about bullying. And I understand that you went into bullying for a long time, I'm sure, as you
Mhm.
were growing up, but you choose not to tell your parents. And I think that's a decision that we take. How did that silence shape how you deal with pain, and how to protect others today, Rocio?
So I've always also been like, I internalize all of if I'm going through something, I'm not good at like speaking up about my own issues or pain, things that bother me. And I've always been that way. And I think I say I get that from my parents because they were kind of like that as well. And so that is still something I have to learn to deal with because I'm the kind of person I'm always showing up for others and making sure they're okay. Like, how are you doing? Let's fix your problem. And it's not that I'm deflecting, it's just more of like, I don't know how to put that on someone else when I'm going through something. And as a kid, I think my dad being a doctor, I never wanted to stress him out because his job was way more important than the things I was dealing with as a kid. I felt like, as I'm like, he's going through life and death situations. Like he was a nephrologist, a kidney doctor. He had his own dialysis center. So it's like I'd go into his dialysis center and there's people there, they're getting their blood transfused and cleaned and they're having to be there all day and they look in pain or someone eating a kidney so I never wanted to put that on my dad. And then my mom, it was hard because the language barrier for her. So even if I were to tell her, she could go to school and they wouldn't, I know for a fact they wouldn't have taken her seriously and they would have had a hard time understanding what she's saying or the message she's trying to come across. So I try to do my best to kind of just be like, okay, these are things that are happening to me that I can manage and I'm okay with. And as a child, you shouldn't be okay with it. But my main thing is always, as long as they weren't doing it to my mom or my dad or my siblings or someone I cared about, then I was okay with internalizing and kind of moving forward. But I always made sure to step up for others if someone else had a situation. And I can give an example when I was a senior in high school and there was a young girl. Her dad was from Nicaragua and her mother was Dominican. But her Dominican mother was half Dominican and half Jamaican. And so it was one of those things where at our school we didn't have MLK Day off. It was just a regular school day for us. And I remember a kid saying something to her. And this kid was probably in middle school, and this little girl was, I would say, maybe 5 or 6 years old. And I overheard him saying, like, shouldn't you be at home today? This is your day. And so I, went up to him and, again, no filter, yelled at him, and then went to the principal's office and kind of explained to him what happened. And her parents were called in and, they suspended the boy and whatnot. But it's things like that that I'm most proud of. Even though I didn't speak up for myself, it's more so like I want to make sure any young girl or boy doesn't have to deal with that and understand that's not okay. And when you're that young, it's hard for you to stand up for yourself as a 5 or 6 year old, And so I just wanted to make sure anytime I saw those things, I'm always there speaking up on behalf for that person, especially those that can't speak up for themselves.
Oh, that is so beautiful. What would you tell that little Rocio? Will you tell them? Would you tell her to tell their parents about the bullying, or do you feel like she was very strong and still you will cheer up for her? What would you tell that little one?
I would probably tell her, the way she handled things was okay because we were stronger at a young age than we even realized. And even looking back, I think that I'm like, oh my gosh, I never, it never bothered me personally that these kids were bullying me. It was just, oh, that's just who they are. That's not who I am. I know who I am. And I think that also part of that is also traveling. My parents, we traveled everywhere. My friends know people from all walks of life, all different backgrounds and ethnicities, to where it's like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes I was more ahead of my time. And I felt more so sorry for those kids. So, than anything. So I think that I would also tell my younger self that, like, we handled that okay, but I would also tell that younger self, like, it's okay to be different. It's okay to dress different. It's okay to look different. Like, that's your superpower. That's actually great that you're not like everyone else. And that's the most important thing I think I would tell my younger self.
I love that. Um, I love that. I'm gonna change a little bit here. Because I want to get into Rocio study biology to
Hmm.
follow that stable path that our parents usually tell us, right? But your
Hmm.
real passion is art, for what I understand. How
Yes.
do you reconcile those two part of yourself today?
So it's interesting. I feel like with my art, I do it more through, you don't see it now, and I'm sorry, this room is completely getting darker and darker, I feel like, because my light bulb just went out. And so, but if you see my place, you'd understand. I only have like one light fixture in the main room, but I do a lot of like pictures I put on the back of my wall, which I'm actually
Wow.
painting this back wall. And basically, I have 121 frames on that wall, all 8 by 11, different quotes or just pictures that just kind of like, I don't know, just speak to me. And so my art comes out in form of that, like decorating my condo, which is like my favorite thing to do. I change it up every few years. As you can see, the walls are really dark blue, but I just have different pieces that I have an eclectic taste. So if you ever came over to my condo, you'll be like, oh, wait, now I know what it's like to be in her brain. Like, this makes perfect
Wow.
sense. Um, and then for the biology side, I feel like I've always liked to help people at a young age. And I do feel like a part of me has been put on this earth. It's more so as a stepping stone for others. Like, I think I come into certain people's lives to kind of be like, hey, you should be doing this, not that. Or, and this is, speak up. You need to, speak up more on this. And have you ever looked at this path? Like almost like a consultant. I've been told that before. My brain works like that. And so I feel like I'm helping others to achieve their dreams and their goals. And so that kind of fulfills the biology side of like, I may not be a doctor, I may not be healing someone physically, but I feel like I do help on the other side of it, whether it's spiritually or mentally or something that's like, wow, I would have never known that or thought to do that if you would have said that. And I've been told that a lot through life. So I think that's how I kind of, both sides of me, I'm able to fulfill.
I love that. How do you realize that art was something you will let go of? And how do you feel ready to claim it again besides just I feel like you also show your art with your outfits. Like I haven't gone to your place, but now I'm like, Rocio, please share photos or something because I really want to see. I really want to see those hundreds.
Well, I feel like it was hard when I was younger because I love singing. So like everyone in my family were like, oh, she's always singing in the car. Like we would be driving from Georgia to Detroit, Michigan. I would not stop singing. Like my dad would get me Mariah Carey cassettes, and I mean, I'd be singing like she was my favorite singer. I'd be like singing all her songs. So it was music was my thing and poetry, and I'd write a lot of poetry. And I feel like I still have kept a little bit of the singing, but I think as we get older, we're like, because it's not like I have a great voice, because I don't. Let's not get that. Let's not put that out
I was
there.
going to ask you.
Let's not do that. But as we get older, we kind of get more it's like it's more shy, or our self-esteem isn't as great when it comes to certain things. And so we don't sing as much. But I mean, I do as much as singing and dancing in my condo. And my boyfriend will tell you this too, around him, that kind of fulfills that side. And I feel like the way to reclaim it for me is, start maybe going to art classes, writing poetry again. Because I stopped as a kid, I just stopped. And I think, life gets in the way. You get
Yeah.
older and you just don't think to do it. So I feel like those are my ways of kind of like taking that back. But you always wonder again who that person would have been if my parents would have like catered more to that gift of
Mm.
mine and what that would be. So I think I don't have children myself, but if I had children, that would be one thing I would make sure. It's like whatever you want to be, sky's the limit. I don't care if as long as you do a great job,
Right.
give it your 110%. I don't
Exactly.
care who what occupation you decide to do, just as long as you give it your all and you love what you do, because that's
Exactly.
most important.
If you work with passion and you enjoy, things will come.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that. We talk a little bit about New York, and my understanding is you love New York. I don't know if you lived in New York, but that passion and love for walking, connecting with people, changed kind of the way you see or saw yourself, especially now. And I love the contrast, right? Georgia is so different from New York. I don't think I will ever live there, but I love that connection with people when you're walking, when it's like art everywhere in a way.
Right. That's the one thing. It's like so I lived in Jersey City, but I would go to New York City all the time. And I mean, I don't know. There's something in me that I just like become alive when I'm in New York City. It's just the hustle and bustle. Everyone's walking fast. Everyone's headed somewhere. But then there's like the guy on the street selling art. There's the guys playing music, different little bookstores you can jump into, or little hole in the wall restaurants that have amazing food. It's like I feel like New York City has got this piece of history that like no other city has, and so it's kind of cool to think of like those that came before us, what they did and where they went out. And it's just, yeah, I just love it. Even the smell, people are like, you like the smell of New York City? It's like, yes, I just love it. I love everything about it.
That's
You know,
funny.
the dollar hot dogs, they're like, that water is dirty. I was like, it's the best hot dog. Maybe that's what makes it so great.
Well, that's
Give me
true.
another, you know. But yeah, it's like all walks of life. Everyone looks different. Everyone's dressed different. And not many places around here do you see that in Georgia,
Yeah.
or other parts of the US.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna change the topic again because we really want to get to know Rocio. And you said something very powerful. Get uncomfortable before getting comfortable.
Mhm.
Can you explain what that means in your life right now?
I think right now, especially professionally, I'll start with professionally. Um, what I mean by that, like for example, I work with, Joe, who is, the CRO, and he is a great person and he is a great leader. And when I first started with him, I was like, oh, I don't know if he's going to be okay with me speaking my mind. And I was like, well, it's going to be really uncomfortable real quick and we'll see how it goes, and so what I mean by that is like sometimes it's uncomfortable to sit there, me as an EA, to tell my leader, hey, this is going on. This is what's going on over here. This is what someone is dealing with right now. And I want you to know, make you aware of it. And I know Joe has a busy day, busy week. And, it's that scary feeling of, oh my gosh, I know this is not a great time to talk to him about this. This is going to make me very like uncomfortable, feel like I'm walking on eggshells. But I put myself in those positions and I sit down with him and I just tell him what's going on that day or with whoever and situation. And he listens. So it's like if I didn't, tell him these things or like ask the hard questions, then that would kind of keep him from being a better leader. But also, what kind of EA would I be if I'm not like expressing those things to him? You know, Even in friendships or relationships, you've got to have those uncomfortable conversations with people, no matter who they are. And on a personal level, it's like for me, it's the uncomfortable conversations with myself. It's like, where do I want to be in 5 years? What do I want to do tomorrow? Like my parents, they moved back to Paraguay. So I only have my sister and brother here. So it's that uncomfortableness of not knowing, okay, what does tomorrow look like without them being here? Also, I need to make it a priority to travel more over there, um, and to make sure they're okay. And, I have a whole family over there that I now realize, okay, I have to figure out a way to take care of a family of mine that my parents took care of. It's like, handing off the baton, which it's a lot of just uncomfortable conversations with yourself that, like, parents don't live or aren't always going to be here forever. Your job, it's, you've got to make sure you're always happy and you're doing right by the person you're helping. So it's like and people they don't like uncomfortable conversations. People in general don't like it. And the way I am, I'm very unfiltered. Joe is so great he takes it in, never anything personal. He takes it in and he listens. But, trust me, being uncomfortable does not always work out for me because there are friends of mine that will they'll take defense to what I'm saying. And it's like, but it's not coming from a judgy place or, I'm not saying it to, points a flaw out. It's like, hey, this is just to better you or to better me, to better the situation. And so it's like every day I go for a run and I run about 10 miles a day. And that is very physically uncomfortable.
Wow. And
Right.
mentally, sometimes, I'm sure.
Yes, yes. And so it's one of
Where do
those
you
things that
run?
I run outside. I don't like running inside. And so I
Wow.
will
Okay.
run up Peachtree Dunwoody and back around. And it's one of whether it's raining, cold, hot, but I like to put myself physically uncomfortable as well, because that actually strengthens your mental, because if you can get through that physically, imagine the things you can get through in life that are just little issues that we think are big. But try running in 100, degree weather when it's humid outside, you know,
Or when it's very
and
cold.
and very cold. And there's so many layers you can put on, and you're like, I'm still freezing. But it's mind over matter.
Right.
Um, so yeah.
Wow, I love that. And you said, I'm not your typical Polish EA. What makes you different? And how do you bring your whole self into your personal and professional life?
Well, I think I'm a very quirky, unfiltered, rough around the edges EA. And what I mean by that is, there's a way an EA should, walk and talk and be very, very professional. I am more of just unfiltered. I say what's on my mind. My emails may not be always properly written, but the thought or the decision or whatnot, the message comes across the same way, just a bit different. But yeah, it's just more so I'm just unfiltered. I'm not politically correct when I speak. And I've learned that that's just who I am, and that's just how I work. And I think that's why it's great to be an EA to the head of ops, We're getting in and getting dirty. There's no time for like pleasantries, It's like we got to get in there and get the work done. A lot of people are counting on you. So I think that's what I mean by like I'm not the typical EA.
I love that. And as you said, when you're working with that level and operations, which is really, you want to get it done, you want to just do it right away. So personalities like you, well needed. I love that.
Thank you.
I'm gonna change a little bit here because I'm cautious of the time, and I really want to get into that, standing between two words. It was you here in the United States, but also having that Latino culture. I want to ask you, how has your relationship with your Latino culture evolved now that you are an adult? An adult.
So I feel like as a kid, it was interesting because at home, I felt like I was in Paraguay because it was like the food my mom cooked, everything was, our native cuisine. I never had a McDonald's, Burger King, nothing growing up. Everything was,
Not Papa John's?
well, actually, funny story. That was the only thing. It was pizza on a Saturday night, and my dad's favorite that he always ordered was the works. But he loved olives, my mom didn't, so we would just pick off the olives. But that was Saturday was the only time we'd have fast food, and that was Papa
That
John's.
shit meal.
Yeah, that was the it meal that we after church, at 5 o'clock, we'd get our Papa John's pizza on a Saturday. Um, so like I'm glad my parents did that though. Like we had even though we didn't live there, the way I was raised, I felt like I was there, and I loved
Mm,
that. So I was very rooted and close to my culture. Um, Versus as an adult, I think it's gotten harder only because like again, all my family has always been in Paraguay. Nobody here except for my siblings and my parents. So that was always that's been very difficult because it's almost like you're having to keep your culture alive without,
right.
the support around you, which has made it very hard for me.
Mm.
But I think going back to Paraguay, I'm going to try to go more often. It will kind of revive that side of me because that is who I am to my core. That's who I am first, Latina first, American second. And I always make sure that I remind myself of that and make myself, aware that I always want to keep that, front and center. Latina first, American second.
How nice. How proud. That's beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
Back in the days, bro, what was like having a father who was a doctor and a mother who struggled with English, in a very southern town, because Georgia, it's difficult now, but back in the days, I can't even imagine.
Yes. So the thing was like people with my dad, he had his own struggles, like with, with certain patients that didn't want him to be their doctor. And I remember one story my dad said to me, that this one gentleman came in and he was like, I don't want you to be my doctor. And my dad's like, okay, that's fine. I'm the best there is in the Southeast, but okay. He's like, I took an oath and I don't see race. I don't see, age, male, female. I'm just here, my oath is to make you better. But if you don't want that, that's fine. And it was stemmed from because my dad was Latino. And he had an accent. And my dad's accent is strong, but it's not as obviously it's not as bad as my mom's. With my mom, and also living in a small town, when people hear, oh, Dr. Espinola, oh, they'll take all the time in the world to listen to you. You know, my mom, them not knowing, again, it's all about status in a lot of these places in the small town that I lived in. And so when they knew my mom, who she was, married to a doctor, they treated her one way. But if they didn't, it was like a lot of just dismissing her, not listening to her. I mean, even going to get like some M&Ms and a soda at a basketball game at my school. And I'm sorry, I don't know what you're saying. I don't understand. And then just kind of walking away. And it's, or if she was frustrated or upset, she couldn't articulate that as quickly as she could in Spanish. So that was hard to see, my dad who could and my mom who couldn't. That was really frustrating to see. And again, that kind of just triggered something in me that if I ever saw that, I always step in. I mean, there's people in my building. I had a situation a few months ago where the concierge in our building, they're like telling me that this woman, Rosalina, who works in our building, must have thrown away her food as she was cleaning out the lobby. And she kind of, an interaction of her voice was being raised and Rosalina was just kind of like, I don't know what you're saying, kind of thing. And not that she couldn't speak English, it was just she didn't know how to articulate herself where to like kind of diffuse the situation. So
Yeah,
I kind
that
of stepped
happens.
in, yeah, spoke to her in Spanish, spoke to her in English, and I said, listen, she's told by property management that they've got to clear out the fridge every day at 5. She apologizes, but that's what they were told. And so I ended up just saying, you know what, let me buy you dinner. So I bought her dinner and it was squashed and both walked away okay. But I just wanted to make sure that Rosalina was not, you know, nothing was going to happen to her regarding her job or this person getting so upset with her because I could tell she was just upset that they were upset and she didn't know how to fix it.
That's nice, stepping up from someone who is not ready, because sometimes when you're in that stress, words just they don't come out.
Right, right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Rocio, in our Latino culture, we usually don't work during college. Looking back, how has that shaped your life and your understanding of financial struggles or privilege?
So interestingly enough, like the only thing I ever did as a kid that my dad made sure I did was be a candy striper at the hospital every summer. So I was able to see all walks of life, the struggles, just health wise, but also financially, people that were trying to like say, I can't afford to be here and things like that. Um, I appreciate that my parents let me focus on education. Um, but I would have loved to have like rolled up my sleeves and been able to work during high school and college because I think that just always betters you as a person, no matter what. And also for me, like my first job coming out of college was in Colorado when I moved there out of, that was where I chose to move. Um, Thankfully, I just have a great work ethic, even though I never worked, because I saw my dad. I saw what he did every day. In the hospital, out of the hospital. If we were sick or I had the sniffles, my dad's like, they've got tissue at the school, go to school, Or, if you're nauseous, oh, that's okay. They've got toilets at the at the school if you want to throw up. So I think I've just always just inside of me, I've always had a good work ethic, regardless of the fact I've never experienced a job until I was, 20 years old, 21. So yeah, I think there are the pros and cons of it, but I do appreciate everything my parents taught me.
I kind of resonate with you because we have that privilege on you only focus on what matters, which is really studying and get you ready for work. And that was kind of the mindset that my family always had. But then when I was here, I started also, to see around and to look for my teammates, and they were already on a job since they were 14, because they had to pay for their education. Um, and I was like, oh my God, thank you. I am lucky, but I also feel like I need to get out there. Um, the opportunities here in the US is like, if you don't have a work or professional resume prior you graduate, probably is gonna be more difficult, or at least it was for architecture. So you really stand up in that place where, what do I do? What I always knew, or what I know, which is my Latina culture, or then here. So it's really nice what you said on the privilege and how lucky um you know we are, or we were at the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm gonna close out with one last question, and it's, what would you like people listening to take away from this episode?
That, it's okay if you don't have it all figured out right away. And no matter what society puts on you, it's okay to do something different. Your timeline is your timeline and nobody else's. Whether you want to go to college, whether you don't, whether you realize that's not for you and something, it's okay. And it's okay to be scared. It's okay, to not have it all figured out at 18, 21, 30, 35. It's okay not to have it figured out at 40, 50. Everyone's timeline is different. So I would say, like, always, whatever in your heart, like, go with that, because that will never steer you wrong, ever. And again, like, don't compare yourself to others, because that's where you find yourself failing. Like, what's right for a person to the left is not might be right for you. So yeah, I would just say, like, follow your heart and just do what you feel is right for you. And always, no matter what, do it 110% and make sure it makes you happy.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your story and all the decisions that you have taken along your life, that toolbox, and that message of getting uncomfortable before getting comfortable, being who you are, and follow your heart. It will really resonate with the audience, Ro, and I am sure this episode will help even more people. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Maria. I appreciate it.